Hello? Boom. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. You've got about 5 seconds to take your place. Don't worry, I am an English native, so we will start just on time. Just like Portuguese are very, very punctual as well, which is great. Don't worry, I live in Spain, so... Fantastic. Okay, so welcome to this penultimate session today at APPI. I'm sure you have all had an incredible day of lots of new information. I've spoken to quite a few of you, and you've all taken away lots of new ideas, and hopefully from today's session with myself, I am Kate from Cambridge, you will take away lots of new ideas as well. As I said, my name is Kate. I'm part of the pedagogical team at Cambridge, meaning we work with schools and teachers all around Europe, from France to Spain to Germany, Italy, and of course, Portugal. It is my first time here in Portugal though, so thank you in advance for making me feel nice and welcome. Thank you. So today you have chosen to attend Integrating Learning and Assessment. So hopefully you're in the right room. And we are all talking all about how we can bring our pedagogical knowledge, teaching and learning when it comes to weaving learning and assessment throughout our everyday class. So let's get started. We're going to start today with our success criteria. And what we're going to do by the end of this session, in 1 hour's time, you will be able to discuss the purpose of assessment. We're going to be able to define integrating learning and assessment. I will probably refer to it as ILA throughout. Okay, so integrating learning and assessment. And then most importantly, how can you apply this to your classroom? So thinking about that Monday morning lesson, actually what can we do a little bit differently on Monday, and then take that through to Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday when it comes to assessment in the classroom. Here we go. So before we start looking at assessment, I wanted to take us back to our why as teachers. Why do we do what we do in the classroom? Now, I've attended quite a lot of talks today, and we've touched on this topic quite a lot, this idea of we want our learners to be really successful in the classroom, and we want to be inclusive. I've seen quite a few talks about how our why as teachers is important. So maybe some of these resonate with you as well. Firstly, we want to support and promote the life chances of our learners. We want them to leave our classroom, whether it's primary, secondary, an academy, adult, whatever learner at whatever stage, we want them in the future to have better life chances. We want them to build confidence and self-esteem. We also want them to have a better level of English, right? Hopefully. They will raise attainment and knowledge when it comes to English as well. We want them to be inspired and motivated to learn English later in life, and also just learning in general. We want to inspire our learners to keep this mentality of lifelong learning, even when they leave us after secondary or higher education. And of course, we want to equip them with the language skills to go out into the real world. So that is our job. But of course, it's not just down to us as teachers. We want our learners to be reflective for themselves. We want them to take responsibility for their learning and ownership. Put your hand up in here if you think that you're quite an organized teacher or an organized person. Who's organized in here? I would say teachers on the whole are pretty organized, right? You're already organized. Are your learners able to organize themselves? Well, that's what we need to be teaching as well. And we want them to work towards their goals. And when they have a goal, whether that is an exam or a qualification, we want them to be able to feel successful And of course, to do that, I really want us to have a look at this quote here, which I think is really nice from Vygotsky. It says, "The teacher must adopt the role of facilitator, not content provider." Now, this is really interesting because it's all about getting our learners to take ownership of their education and of their learning in the classroom. Anyone can pick up a textbook and read it in front of a class of 30. Does it mean that we have high quality teaching and learning? No. So what we need to do is integrate learning and assessment into our classroom. So I've got 3 questions for you, and I would like you to discuss with people around you. Okay, so if you don't quite know someone, introduce yourself with a quick hello, and these are your 3 questions. Firstly, do you, or if you are a head of department or a director, your teachers, do you consistently use assessment techniques in the everyday classroom? Do you see assessment as a test that is done at the end of the unit or at the end of the year? And the third one, do you agree or disagree that using a range of assessment strategies ultimately improves the level of attainment and helps learner make better progress towards their goals? 5, meaning totally agree, and 1, no, totally disagree. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to have a quick discussion, and then we'll see what everyone says. Off you go. Okay, in 3, 2, 1, 0. If you can finish your conversations, come back to me. Come back to me. There we go. Right. Now I need a show of hands, very, very quickly. First one, consistently. Do you or your teachers consistently use assessment techniques? Who's at perhaps 1 or 2? Okay. More towards 4 and 5? Consistently using them? Pretty good. And perhaps then the rest of you somewhere in the middle. Okay. Who thinks it's a test at the end? Number 5 or number 4 or number 5 completely, totally agree it's at the end? Okay. No one. And then perhaps, what about in the middle then? This one could be quite interesting in the middle. Maybe, okay, about 5 or 6. And then, of course, then most of you disagree then. It's not just something that we see at the end of the test, or the end of the unit or the end of the year, of course. And then using a range of assessment strategies will ultimately improve their level of English. Who's at number 5? Who agrees? Yes. Okay. So just to recap then with some of these perhaps misconceptions when it comes to assessment, if we look at number 2, perhaps at some point in your career, you will have yourself or you will have seen teachers believe that the only way to assess is that summative final assessment at the end of the year or at the end of the unit. But actually, what we want to talk about today is integrating, or I prefer weaving with this silly little handshake, so you'll probably see me doing this a lot, and it means weaving assessment throughout the lesson. So really integrating it and weaving it into every single classroom that we have in your school and every lesson that you give. But actually, it's not as hard as it sounds. You're probably already doing this most of the time. And we're going to have a look today at how Cambridge, how we suggest and that we have seen from our research and our decades of investigation and studies that we have been doing, how we have seen the levels of English improve thanks to integrating learning and assessment. So here is a video to quickly explain how this looks in the classroom.
What we measure, we can improve. That's how, as a coach or an English teacher, I find the best ways to help my learners succeed. Things can get tough, and improving isn't easy. The key is to assess the progress they are making. With Cambridge, assessment is integrated with learning, helping me measure and guide my learners' progress, so they learn what they need to succeed. Because Cambridge is where your world grows.
Okay, so what I really liked from that video then...
Progress and action.
What I really like from the video is one element that hopefully we'll get to see. Yes, this element here. So perhaps you recognize something similar that has happened in your classroom. This just looks like a normal pair speaking activity and the teacher is circulating, right? Something that you can see when you walk into one of your colleagues' classrooms, and perhaps this takes up 10 minutes of your usual lesson. But actually, if we dissect this, if we look a little bit further into what is actually happening here, well, there's assessment that is taking place. We've got the teacher that is circulating and monitoring. We've got questioning as the teacher is walking around and concept checking. Not just do you understand, that we're going to have a look at a little bit later, but actually asking them to provide evidence of what they have learned. It is maximizing all resources, so they're perhaps working with the textbook here, and they're working towards an exam. And of course, encourages peer feedback. That sense of responsibility that we want to create within our learners when they give each other feedback here, that is giving them a sense of agency and autonomy. So what would happen next, perhaps, in this scenario? For example, well, we might see some self-assessment take place. We might see some use of digital resources, and of course, working towards that final goal, that success criteria, which in this case could be a final exam. So integrating learning and assessment then, no matter who you are in this room, no matter what level you teach, integrating learning and assessment is important because, firstly, it is the mindset of the teachers, the learners, leaders, and parents that need to get on board with this way of integrating assessment into the classroom. Now, a quick story for you. When I trained to be a teacher, I trained as a French and a Spanish teacher in the UK. I trained in London in one of the most impoverished and disadvantaged areas in East London. If anyone knows Whitechapel, has anyone been to Whitechapel? Yeah, you may know some of the types of students that I may have taught. And there we faced challenges such as poverty, violence, and those were some of the most difficult times of my career, until I got to Spain and I tried to teach integrated learning and assessment and trying to change the parent mentality that an exam wasn't at the end. That became the most challenging part of my career, is changing the mindset between end summative exams and actually we can see woven throughout assessment brings better results. So we need to get everyone on board with this. We need to align the curriculum, assessment, and your professional training. And then finally, we're going to have a look at the 4 pillars of classroom practice. So in order for us to be successful with this mindset of weaving assessment throughout to increase the level of English, we need to apply these 3 elements. We're going to look particularly today, though, at the 4 pillars and what it looks like for your classroom on Monday. So let's watch a video again of Evelina explaining the 4 pillars.
As Cambridge, we help teachers and learners to get the most from every moment of learning. Backed by our research, we believe that providing evidence of progress and actionable feedback is the best way to help learners succeed. Our new paper shows that by integrating teaching, learning, and assessment, you can have a big impact on learners' success. Here are your top 3 insights. 1. Teachers should integrate assessment as a key part of their teaching practices. 2. Educational leaders need to align curriculum, teaching, and assessment. And 3. Follow these key steps. Start by setting clear learning objectives. Collect evidence of progress towards them. Use this evidence to give learners actionable feedback and tailored follow-up activities. Find out more at cambridge.org/ILA.
All right, so that's what we're going to be looking at, those 4 important pillars for your classroom on Monday. So as Evelina said, we want to start with learning objectives, and I'm going to take you through some examples. As I said, this is perhaps something that you are already doing, that you see this in your classroom or with your teachers throughout. So what does it look like? Firstly, learning objectives. For example, if we are working towards our English skills test, which is a new exam or a new formative assessment that we have at Cambridge that we are launching soon, if we are working towards this particular formative assessment, we might have a learning objective that says to develop writing skills by planning a debate about the disadvantages and advantages of sport. And we want to use the present simple to talk about different sports. That's what we are working towards. It's our success criteria, our roadmap for where we're going. Throughout the lesson, then, what is happening where the teacher can collect evidence of progress towards those learning objectives. For example, we might see something like a Kahoot. Do I have any fans of Kahoot in the room? Who's a fan of Kahoot? Yes. It can be a very powerful tool. It can also be a massive distraction, but it can be a very powerful tool. So if used correctly, we can use Kahoots to use as evidence of progress. And then, for example, another activity might be a practice writing where they do a peer assessment. Okay, we've seen that Juan has used better authentic phrases, and that is our evidence of progress towards learning objectives. So what happens next at actionable feedback? Well, looking at what Juan has done, what does he need to do? Well, he needs further consolidation of difficult spellings when it comes to this particular topic. So in his particular example, it's equipment, okay? That's what he needs to work on. It's the difficult topic spellings. But Juan, by himself, is he going to know how to practice those difficult spellings? Someone with high executive function may know. If you have your average 14-year-old, 15-year-old, or even earlier, even younger, are they going to know what to do? No, highly unlikely. So as teachers, we can give them tailored follow-up activities. Sorry, just a whole row of phones just went up there. And we want to give them specific, actionable things for them to complete either in the classroom or at home. For example, achieving at least 85% on Practice Extra, which is one of our online resources, but you may use other digital resources such as Quizlet for practice, okay? We see this loop, this circular woven way or methodology of improving assessment and weaving it in to our everyday classroom. Is there anything there that is new to you? Probably not, but it is making it consistent and is making it available to everyone in your classroom. Inclusive practice is key to ILA. So, what we're going to do now then is go through and look at how you can apply these principles to your classroom on Monday. Okay? You are going to need to play some games. You are going to need to talk to the people around you, so I hope you're feeling up for it. So, first one, learning objectives then. What does the research say about learning objectives? Well, having clear goals and objectives is one of the best strategies to better achievement. We know that learners welcome and they actually crave direction. And in a session earlier that I saw, there was talking about a menu or ingredients for a lesson, which is great. And we want to polish the ingredients into an objective to give them direction. And of course, we want them to be set nearly every lesson, or at least in every unit, to give our learners a sense of where they are on their learning journey. So, imagine then, this is my learning objective. It's my shopping list. I've got eggs, I've got milks, I've got butter. This is my objective. What do we think? If I'm going to go ahead and my objective is to use this list on my weekly shop. I don't know about you, but Saturdays I normally do my shopping. Today, not so much. But maybe tomorrow. Oh, it's Friday today, isn't it? Thank you. Tomorrow then, I would, but I'm at APPI, as all of you. We would normally go shopping. Does this list tell me much about what I'm going to be doing in the lesson? Well, a little bit, yes. It tells me what I need to find. It tells me things that I have as a reminder if I forget. And it's a bit of a to-do list. Okay? But these are all just random words. Have I been able to use any of these to actually make a recipe? Have I become a better shopper because of these list of words? Well, not quite. So what can I do then to change my to-do list into a learning objective that will help me make progress? So we want to abide by these principles. Firstly, using any of the course book materials that you already have. At Cambridge, we have teacher books where they have all of the objectives already set for you, which of course you can manipulate and adapt to your classes, but using any books that you already have. Working backwards, what is the end result and how are you going to get there? They can use these objectives as their success criteria to revisit at the end of the lesson. So before you leave or before you dismiss the class, they have to reflect on the learning objectives that were established and discussed at the beginning of the lesson. This will help create that golden loop, the golden thread that goes through a lesson is circling back to your objectives at the start. And we want to be as specific as possible. So instead of, we're going to do some speaking today, let's change it. Let's do something like to create a role play script for a job interview using the following vocabulary. And then whatever level that you may have, we want to be as specific as possible. So thinking about these three things then, planning backwards, using it as a success criteria, and then finally being specific, how would you change these mini kind of half objectives? So we've got learn new vocab about clothing, complete the reading on page 56, and to do some speaking in pairs. If you were to change this from a to-do list into our objectives, how would you change them? I'm going to give you 45 seconds, again with the people around you. Have a go. What would you do instead? Off you go. Maybe I'll give you a minute. Okay, 3, 2, 1, 0, and back to me. Come back to me. Okay, so you may have discussed something like the following. By the end of the lesson, you will be able to, look how specific this is, describe material and patterns of clothing using 10 adjectives. Develop annotation strategies. Develop extended reading about fast fashion using page 56. And including topic vocabulary in a pair debate. These are much more specific, they are measurable, and something that we can circle back to at the end of the lesson. Did anyone else add anything to these types of learning objectives? I think I heard some mentions about time. Did anyone add in anything about time or anything else? Well, come and tell me afterwards, because I'm going to move on now because we are limited in time. So, changing our learning objectives. Next, evidence of progress. What can you do then in your everyday classroom to assess every single lesson? Well, again, let's look at the research. Firstly, we know that questioning techniques is an incredibly powerful tool of assessment. But not just any questioning techniques. We need the art of questioning that we'll have a look at. We also need to maximize monitoring and circulating. Who in here does at least 10,000 steps on their average day at school? I definitely did. That's because we're walking around constantly listening to our students speak, and we're walking around and doing all of those steps. We want to integrate low-stakes quizzes, low-anxiety quizzes that are not high-stakes exams that gets our students all stressed. No, regular retrieval or recall quizzes that become a routine in our lesson. And then finally, we want to use technology. Why? It reduces workload. Who doesn't love a reduced workload, right? We want to harness technology to help us collect that evidence where we don't have to mark it ourselves, and we want to use it in the classroom where possible. So we're going to explore, what does this look like in the classroom then? Firstly, we talked about the art of questioning. So imagine that you are preparing for a lingua skill, or your learners are going to take our lingua skill exam. Say, for example, that we are doing the reading and we're preparing for the reading. What do you think about these types of questions? Do you understand the text? Did you get at least 8 out of 10? And you know what it all means, right? Are these good questions? No, okay, quite obvious. So instead then, what do we want to be asking our learners? Well, we want to be asking them things like, describe person A's, in this imaginary text that I have invented, describe person A's usual weekend routine using 3 examples. Create 3 sentences using the present simple, which was one of our objectives, if you remember. And then explain to your partner in your own words something from the text. These questions elicit how much your learner really understands. Because if you ask them, do you understand? Of course they're going to go, yes, yes, yes. And I know this was mentioned in a talk earlier that I went to. No one's going to say no. But if you ask them to prove how much they know, well, that's a different kettle of fish. Now, we may need to scaffold these types of questions. We may need to, of course, adapt them for our learners. We may need to provide a worked example, of course. But these concept-checking questions are much more powerful and can be used as an assessment tool. Closed questions such as these ones are not helpful for us or the learner. But instead, we're checking in and we're asking them to take responsibility and show evidence for their learning. So, that is the art of questioning. Then we have this sense of recall or retrieval quizzes. Now, this means that they can't use any notes. Okay, so they're relying on their long-term memory, and they need to pull out the information perhaps from before without using any of their notes. What does this look like? Well, it might look something a little bit like this. Imagine that you're using thinking space A2, you're working on unit 2, shopping and money. Perhaps you're on our 5th lesson now, and the first 10 minutes of your lesson is simply choose 2 boxes. So we might do things like write 10 keywords, create 3 questions with the answer, summarize in your own words, draw an image, and explain 3 different key ideas. Now, we are giving them options. We're giving them different ways. We're talking about multimodal here, perhaps not necessarily in these examples, but you could introduce multimodal ways of getting them to retrieve and recall information. And of course, that forgetting curve. So of course, if we were to go ahead in 1 year's time and say, what were the 4 pillars of ILA? Are you going to be able to do it? No. But if we revisited it every single week for a year, will you be able to do it then? Yes. So introducing low-stakes quizzes and retrieval as part of your routine is a really helpful way to strengthen attainment and to help them make better progress. So now I'm actually going to ask you to do a low-stakes quiz with me. Now, what I'd like you to do is to choose a piece of fruit. Or perhaps choose 2 pieces of fruit for me. So we've got a kiwi, explain. List is a strawberry. Spot the odd one out is a coconut. Change the sentence, an apple. And create a question is a lemon. I want you to choose 2 pieces of fruit, just by yourself. And now, with those pieces of fruit, what I'm going to ask you to do is the following quiz. If you are a kiwi, you're going to explain what is the purpose of ILA. What have we been talking about so far? If you're a strawberry, list as many words as possible about ILA, anything to do with ILA that we've been talking about. If you're a coconut, out of these words, what is the odd one out? Kahoot, monitoring, questioning, final exam, and collaboration work. Which one is the odd one out? And why? If you're an apple, change that horrible sentence. And then finally, if you're a lemon, create a question and ask your partner. For this one, I'm going to give you 3 whole minutes. So if you do 2 pieces of fruit and you finish, you may do a 3rd piece of fruit. 3 minutes, off you go. Okay, yes. You've had 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Now, I practice what I preach. I did go around and circulate and monitor just to make sure everyone was on task. No, of course. Right, what does this mean then? What can this look like in the classroom? Well, let's go through a couple of the answers. So the first one, if you're a Kiwi, you may have said something like, to raise attainment of English and improve the life chances and opportunities of our learners. Okay? Now, for number 2, in a classroom scenario, I would have played last pupil standing, which is where everyone has to stand up and you go around and someone has to say one key word. If someone repeats or hesitates for too long, they are out and they have to keep writing what everyone else is saying. There's about 300 to 400 of you here, so I'm not going to ask you to stand up and do it. But did anyone remember at least 5 key words about ILA? Who got at least 5 if you were a strawberry? No one got at least 5 key words? Well, we had 4 over here, so maybe 4 is our champion then. Oh, you did? Nice. Well done. Okay, change the sentence then. You may have said something like, oh, sorry, I missed the coconut. The answer for spot the odd one out is the final exam, because the others are examples of formative or informal assessment. Okay? What could we do then to change that sentence? You may have said, assessment is integrated into everyday teaching practice that can be informal or formal so that learners know where they are on their learning journey and they know what they need to do to improve. And then, of course, hopefully you've asked a question to someone if you were a lemon, and hopefully they got the answer correct. So this is an example of a low-stakes quiz that you can integrate into your lessons that is testing different or checking understanding of in different ways that gives our learner a choice. Okay, so you were able to choose what exactly you wanted to do, and it was low stakes, so there was no pressure, and it was not high anxiety. So we can use that to collect evidence. Now, the final bit of collecting evidence that I'm going to show you before you tell me how you collect evidence is using a dictogloss. So you will need a paper and a pen or a phone to type, but you're going to need to write something down. Okay, so we're going to play this little listening and writing game, and it goes like this. We're going to listen to the recording, but no one can write anything. So you must be hands-free for the first time and second time that we listen to it. Then when I say go, you can then start to write something down that you remember from the text. Okay, so we're going to listen to the audio. You're going to write down, when I say go, what you remember, and then you're going to see if you can reconstruct the text entirely. Okay? Now, I'm going to warn you. The text, or the audio, is a Welsh accent. And it's quite strong. So, we're going to listen to it twice. So, first thing I'm going to ask you to do then is hands-free. So no one typing and no one writing anything, please, for the first 2 times that we listen to this audio. Hands-free. Now, in a classroom setting, depending on your learners, you could have jazz hands, you could have them sitting on their hands, whatever you need. I trust you, so I'm not going to make you do jazz hands. Here we go.
Yeah, 10 years ago, I was at secondary school and I was still living at home. My classmates used to be my best friends, so I didn't need to make an effort to meet new people. I used to have quite a lot of free time, although I used to help around the house a lot more.
Don't write anything. Hands free. Second time. Don't worry, second time.
Yeah, 10 years ago, I was at secondary school and I was still living at home. My classmates used to be my best friends, so I didn't need to make an effort to meet new people. I used to have quite a lot of free time, although I used to help around the house a lot more.
And then in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now you're right. What was it about? And now see if you can reconstruct it word for word. Don't aim for perfection, but what was it word for word? Would you like the answer? Should I put you out your misery?
Yeah. 10 years.
Oh, here we go. Here is the text. It actually only goes up to about halfway, around there, okay? Did anyone notice, by the way, whilst we were doing that exercise, the grammar point that perhaps we would be touching on? Used to. So this is also another way that we can introduce grammar without introducing it by the rules, introducing it through listening and reading activities. Okay, so this is taken from one of our textbooks, but you could get any text. I actually used AI to help me create that. I'm going to show you quickly. We've just discussed this. This is a way to teach grammar and a collaborative way to collect evidence. Now, that audio was used with NarrowKeat. NarrowKeat is really cool because, as I said, it's an AI technology. It's not Cambridge endorsed, but it is one of my favorites as a teacher, where you can put any text in and it will turn it to audio, and it is the ability to choose the accent and the person. Okay, so you can choose, of course, here we've got Shirley in a Scottish accent. Would you like to hear Shirley? Let's give her a go.
When I was a little kid, my father used to watch a lot of old movies and I sat with him and loved them too, especially the musicals. So, you see, my career was inspired by him in a way, and these old movies played a big part in my life. They were the reason I wanted to learn to sing.
Okay, so this was actually taken from one of our Cambridge exams, the listening transcript, and I just popped it through and changed the accent. In our exams, we do have a variety of accents, so it's a good way to train your learners to do the listening once in one accent, and then again, the same thing, perhaps in a different accent. So there you go, that's a nice tool to use to choose any, there's about 10 different people per regional accent. You have South African, Scottish, Welsh, Irish, etc., okay? You have lots of different accents on there. So, how did that help us then when it comes to evidence, or collecting evidence? Well, we know that we can monitor and circulate. Now, we've just gone through 4 different ways that you can collect evidence of progress: questioning, low-stakes quizzes, retrieval, and using course books to play games like a dictogloss. But in your opinion, what is your best practice? And I'd like you to share, please, on this Padlet. So if you go ahead and you scan the QR code here, it will take you to our APPI Padlet. And I want you to share the best practice that you have seen in your classroom or someone else has done, and pop it on there. Once you've scanned it, you will see this button here. You press the cross at the bottom to add your idea, and then you press submit on the top right. Okay, so what is best practice in your school? If you don't have a smartphone or you're out of battery, whatever, just simply discuss with the people around you, how do you collect evidence of progress in your classes? Okay, I'm going to put up all of the ideas, so as you add them, it will populate the Padlet, and I'm going to upload that in 1 minute. Okay, so adding to the Padlet or discussing with people around you, collecting evidence. Off we go. Here we go. So as you add, You can take this away with you, by the way, this Padlet board. Okay, so this isn't going anywhere, it's not being deleted. So all of the ideas that you populate now will come up and you can take it away. Okay, so I'm going to put the QR code back on and we'll come back to that at the end. Okay, so here you go, a couple of minutes, add your ideas, and then take this Padlet away to share with your departments, share with your teachers. Off we go. Okay, so they're all coming up. They're all coming up here, but they're all collating in one area. So what I'll do later is I'll move them across so you can all see them. It's not very helpful from Padlet, is it? Okay, we've got describing pictures, think, pair, share. Okay, lots of other ideas. Can you see them on your phones? Yeah, okay, better. Okay, so take this Padlet, and keep adding to it throughout the session if you have an idea or you remember something that you do. And as I said, once I spread all of your ideas out so you can see them nice and clearly, you can take it away, share it with your colleagues, and hopefully anytime that you think, okay, I need an idea, I need some inspiration, you can go to this Padlet and you can see lots of ideas that you have shared with all of your fellow colleagues in Portugal for collecting evidence of progress. So let's move on then to our next pillar, which is actionable feedback. So what does the research say about actionable feedback? Well, it needs to relate directly to the learning objectives, and it can act as a success criteria. Who has a learner, or perhaps a whole class, that says, does this count? Does this count when it comes to an assessment? Yes. All they want to know is that numerical grade. Is it helpful to them? It's somewhat, but it doesn't give them any idea of how they need to improve. So it's about going back to what we said at the beginning, changing the mindset of our learners about the next steps that they're going to take. And then we want to give them actionable steps, okay? Telling them what they must do. So a scenario for you. Perhaps you know someone a little bit like this. The scenario is the following. We've got Manu over here. He's an experienced teacher of 12 years, and he genuinely is loving his job. He loves teaching. In July, he's going to set his learners up for the C1 advanced exam. However, he's feeling a little bit burnt out and a little bit tired from taking a big stack of books home nearly every day to write comments and to correct and to circle. He's feeling a bit burnt out. He's doing a speaking mock next week. What could he do in terms of feedback to avoid any kind of burnout and give succinct, concise, and actionable feedback? What do you think? I'm going to show you a couple of ideas in a minute, but just 30 seconds, again, with the people around you, perhaps someone new this time. What advice would you give to Manu for actionable feedback for his speaking mock? Off you go. Okay, let's take a look then. Perhaps some of you said something like the following: a pupil-friendly success criteria. So we see here on the left, this is the rubric of Cambridge. This is perhaps the more serious one. But actually, if we look at some of the words here, initiates and responds appropriately, linking contributions of those to other speakers. Now, if you're 13, 14, or perhaps at C1 level, you might be 15 or 16, do we know exactly what that means? Maybe, but maybe not as well. So if we look at ideas of what I could do instead, we have examples. Have I acknowledged my partner's contribution? Did I say in my speaking mock things like, as you mentioned, carrying on from what you said, just to echo your idea, or to pick up on what you said? Now, these are teetering, I would say, on the C2 level, but between C1 and C2 here, the pupil can have access to the success criteria, and as Manu is marking, he can simply tick or highlight if this pupil has been able to do it. We could also introduce this in peer assessment and self-assessment if the speaking mock is recorded and they can listen to it back either in lesson or as a homework activity. Again, similar thing with the second part of the exam. The rubric, the official, more serious, formal rubric says maintains and develops interaction and negotiates towards an outcome. But in reality, that sounds like it could be argued that I would have to disagree. Or perhaps we didn't include on a final point, but we did explore a range of ideas. Okay? So Manu could use this in his lessons to give feedback and for the learners to then do a self-assessment or peer assessment. In a very similar way then, we talked about that highlighting of a success criteria or of a rubric. Again, we have a pupil-friendly rubric here that we have simply ticked. So they have achieved these areas, and the highlighter is where they need to improve. On the side, we have WWW. Anyone want to hazard a guess about what that means? It means what went well. So that's our tick. What went well? High level of fluency and good development of partners' contributions. We can see that here. And EBI? Anyone want to have a guess at that one? Even better if. Even better if. Okay, so we have our what went well, WWW, even better if, EBI, and that is our target that we have that is actionable. So we've got develop your level of complex vocabulary and idioms. This is a C1 example. Of course, this would change depending on the level. And we have complete activities 1 to 3. Okay, so this is just a nice example of what Manu could do to give concise and actionable feedback that doesn't limit his, or doesn't lead to any kind of burnout. So the last thing that we have as part of our 4 principles of ILA is tailored follow-up. So we know that when we repeat a task in a slightly different way, it enables us to act on the feedback. And they need explicit steps. They need to know what exactly to do. So who has a class of 30 in here? Who teaches at least, say, 25 to 30 pupils once? Yes. Can we be giving every single pupil handwritten, long comments? No, because A, it's not effective use of time. They don't read it anyway, let's be honest. But what we can be doing is use digital resources to help us. We've got test and train. You can individually assign tasks and activities per pupil. So we know what they need to work on and we assign it to them. They go ahead and they complete it. We also have a choice board of activities that they could do in dirt time. This is not mud and getting dirty. It is simply dedicated or directed improvement and reflection time. Adding in 15 minutes of dirt every lesson sounds funny to the students. We know it's all about reflection, but we could do something like this. You have this template, by the way, on the Padlet that I've given you. So if you wanted to take away and use this, go ahead, it's there for you. All you would need to do is say, work on your listening skills, and the learner would go to the listening box and it tells them exactly what to do. It is high impact, low preparation. Okay, so it's actionable, it is specific, and it is appropriate, and it doesn't add to your workload for a teacher. So to summarize everything that we have looked at today, we have this quote here. One of the main benefits of the ILA approach is gaining insights to inform future teaching so that it can better meet student needs and make better progress. Everything that we do is to better the life chances of our learners. As we can see here, by following this ILA approach, this circle, it raises attainment levels as students take responsibility for their learning and teachers give feedback to supercharge that progress. How amazing is the feeling when our learners achieve their B2 certificate or their C1 certificate or any level certificate, and they have that feeling of success. They know where they have been on their learning journey, and they know the progress that they have made. Some of my happiest days as a teacher has been on results day when our learners come in and they're crying, I'm crying, everyone's so happy because they got their results. And it's all because we've been able to weave in and integrate assessment into the everyday practice. So if you would like to read a little bit more about it, this is what we have achieved today. Do go ahead and read our teacher guide by scanning that QR code. It breaks down what we have looked at today with even more examples of what it looks like in the classroom. And of course, if you are into a little bit more academic and a little bit more research-based information, you can also download our white paper here, which is all about the research and how at Cambridge we have come to this conclusion that this is the best way to achieve results. Now, if you email this to, or if you email me, or perhaps speak to one of my Cambridge colleagues that I will show you in a second, then we'll be able to send you all of the resources we looked at today and send you this, this white paper and the teacher guide as well. I'm not going to make you do an exit ticket, but it is an example of formative assessment. And here you go, just to say a big obrigada from me, big thank you. Email me, that is my email if you have any questions. I'm also going to point out my colleagues. Over there we have Frank, can you give us a wave? And we have Zhao at the back there. And of course, you'll see them on the Cambridge stand as well. But any questions about ILA or exams or anything at all, come and speak to us, come and say hello. And otherwise, thank you for listening.